What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an all-new Let's Play Hearts of Iron 4. We are about to dive into a brand new campaign. We, of course, are going to be starting on the 1st of January 1936, the Gathering the Storm scenario. And we obviously have played a variety of scenarios in the past. We have played as the United States. We have played as the German Reich. We have even played as Japan and the Soviet Union, but one country that we are still yet to experience is Italy itself, led by Benito Mussolini. Now, of course, the Italian Empire is fascist, and they are a totalitarian regime, and much like every country in Hearts of Iron 4, they have a variety of attributes and bonuses that basically give you a special flavor for the particular nation you are leading. Okay, so we have Victoria Mutilata, which basically ensures that we have, fascist friends, and that basically entails us giving us better diplomacy and the ability to justify war goals at a little bit of a fraction, a little bit cheaper, I should say. And we also have Victor Emmanuel III giving us base national unity, and much like every other nation in the game, we also have the ability to not necessarily play a historical playthrough, but we have a variety of different branches that we could basically bring our government. So right now we have the Pact of Steel, the Spanish-Italian Alliance, and Italy First. And ultimately, we are going to progress through the Pact of Steel because this is the most historical alliance with Germany rather than necessarily a Spanish-Italian alliance, or better yet, creating our own faction with Italy First. But other than that, let's go ahead and dive on in. One thing that I do want to mention starting on off, you can see that it's 12 o'clock on the 1st of January 1936. We are actually going to load 1 hour into the future. And the reason why I'm going to do this is because basically I wanted to spare everybody who's watching this about 5 minutes of, grueling re-maneuvering, disbanding air wings, repositioning all of our navies into one big area. And basically all of our units are in one massive group starting off in the beginning. And so what I did is for 5 minutes, I basically made all of our mountaineers go into one area. I made all of our colonial troops down to another. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a moment. So without further ado, let's dive in. So ultimately what I did is, you can see that we have the Italian theater here. This was all one big massive group, and so the idea is we are currently in a war with Ethiopia, and I wanted all of my Ethiopian troops to basically be in one army rather than having all of those troops down in Ethiopia being in the same army as, I don't know, our tanks that are all the way up here inside Venice. Okay, so one thing that you do need to know about this Italian playthrough is we are going to play as historical as we possibly can. So that means we are going to be joining the Axis, we are going to be allying ourselves with the German Reich. The only thing that I do want to mention is Italy, of course, is it's not necessarily that weak of a country, but it's obviously not a superpower like the German Reich or even the Soviet Union or, of course, the United States to our west. Now, Italy, of course, is a very powerful nation, don't get me wrong, but one thing that we are going to do that isn't necessarily that historical is we are going to do an invasion of Yugoslavia. Now, Yugoslavia, I believe, was invaded in like 1941, so it did happen, don't get me wrong, but only after they joined the Allies. Another thing I want to mention, we are probably going to do an invasion 3 years earlier in 1938. So the reason why we're going to go after Yugoslavia is because Italy is a powerful nation, but we don't have the production capabilities to basically keep up with the rest of the world. And if we want to make this playthrough interesting, we obviously need to basically make Italy as strong as possible to obviously combat the Soviet Union, help out the Germans, and obviously secure the Mediterranean and, of course, Africa. Okay, so now that I am basically done rambling, the very first thing that we absolutely need to do is we need to set up our research slots. What's really cool, a lot of nations don't actually start with 4. Most of them start with 3, especially the Soviet Union. They start with 3, and so they're very hindered early on. But what's neat is Italy does start with 4. So we are going to go through our standard construction build. Going on over to the industry tab, we're going to scroll down, and we absolutely want to start researching better construction speed for all of our buildings. So that means we basically get all of our buildings, all of our factories that are going to be constructing 10% faster. That is actually pretty phenomenal. So every 10 we create, we basically get one free. Still in the industry tab, we are going to use another research slot to get basic machine tools, improving the production efficiency cap for all of our units by plus 10%. That's pretty broken as well. But ultimately, we are going into production to unlock industry, which is going to be pretty phenomenal. Concentrated industry gives factory output, but we can't get it just yet. And we have 2 research slots left. Let's go ahead. We were in industry. We're going to move on over to engineering. And as you can see, we have the electronic engineering tab at 1936. We are going to be unlocking electronic mechanical engineering, giving us a permanent reduced research time bonus of only 2%. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but ultimately this is absolutely phenomenal. Getting a 2% research bonus for the rest of the game is going to add up. So let's go ahead and do this. It's only 99 days compared to 198. And finally, usually we don't have a 4th research slot, but because we do, we are going to go ahead and get started on the Land Doctrine tab. And basically, if you're new to Hearts of Iron 4, every single nation can get 1 land doctrine. And basically, there are a variety of trees and talents to go through. We have the mobile warfare doctrine, which is basically like blitzkrieg warfare. And so if you're playing a country like Germany, you want to really invest in blitzkrieg because it means lightning warfare and armored divisions. So ultimately, what's going to happen is this is a very aggressive playstyle tree, and it's really going to give you some improvements to your tanks and your mechanized infantry, and it's really going to give you a lot of speed and breakthrough. Taking a glance at superior firepower, these are basically the kind of countries where our manpower is precious, bullets are cheap. So if we look at a country like the United States, they don't necessarily, or I'm not necessarily sure if this is Great Britain as well, but if we look at the United States, they obviously don't want to, waste a lot of their manpower because they don't really have all that much. So the idea is they're going to be investing in a lot of artillery and a lot of like mechanized equipment and infantry. But ultimately, the idea is they want to preserve their infantry because our manpower is precious, bullets are cheaper. Now, of course, we have Grand Battle Plan as well as a variety of other countries. And ultimately, what this does, it's kind of like a jack of all trades. Now, don't get me wrong, every single tree here is great, and they're always going to give us improvements, but each tree has a variety of flavors, so you're not going to get any negative benefits. So the Grand Battle Plan is like a jack of all trades. We have already actually started with trench warfare, so ultimately it would be a waste of time because this would take about a year to research, and I don't necessarily want to go to any other branches. So this is like a jack of all trades, gives us a lot of defensive abilities, gives us a lot of offensive tactics and offensive abilities, and as we go down, we can go into assault doctrines or infiltration, and basically this is all mechanized, this is all, necessarily tanks, and this is all all infantry equipment and units. So another thing I want to move on to is we also have the mass assault doctrine, and if you're new to Hearts of Iron 4, this is basically the type of country that has a pretty big pool of manpower and not necessarily the best economy starting off. So basically what that means is we have a ton of units and we have enough weapons. So good enough weapons, not necessarily like anything amazing like artillery. So these are for the countries like Soviet Union where you can overwhelm the enemy with just superior numbers. Okay, so now that I have babbled on for almost 2 minutes about doctrines, we are going to move on down to Grand Battle Plan. And one thing that I failed to mention, all of these doctrines take so long to research. So getting that electronic mechanical engineering, getting a 2% bonus in about 100 days is really going to be pretty phenomenal. So ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to unlock Grand Battle Plan. One thing that I also want to mention is anytime you go into doctrines, they are permanent bonuses that don't require you to construct any type of equipment. So imagine 30% planning. This is ridiculously broken and absolutely overpowered. So what we want to do is obviously go through Grand Battle Plan and try to unlock that. 297 days is ridiculously a long time. But let's move on. This tab is basically saying that we are in a war with Ethiopia. Obviously, we have 242,000 troops. They have roughly 65,000. And we are going to absolutely dominate them. And the entire idea is we started off in this war, and we are going to go after this 2 rubber and whatever type of, industry they happen to have. I'm hoping they have some civilian factories that we could take advantage of. And we are going to go ahead and finally use our civilian factories. And if you're new to Hearts of Iron 4, the civilian factory is the backbone of your economy. Basically, a civilian factory is the currency inside Hearts of Iron 4. Now, ultimately, the more civilian factories you buy, the better your economy will be. So one civilian factory basically creates more and more of everything else. So right now, we have essentially 12 civilian factories working on a single product. Now, if I wanted to create more civilian factories, we can have a queue, as you can see. So the idea is we want to have roughly about 16 civilian factories, so then we could really start on 2 projects at once. Now, obviously, the one civilian factory down here eventually is going to be ridiculously slow at constructing something, but the idea is we can not only still work on our economy, but with the second project, we might be able to work on something like a radar station or an airbase. Now, civilian factories are ridiculously expensive compared to naval dockyards. Naval dockyards are almost 50% cheaper than a civilian factory, and military factories are about 20 to 30% cheaper. So we are going to go ahead, we're going to build 4 factories just to build up our economy. We're not really in a war, well, we are in a war, but we are going to win this without any real issues. So the idea is to grow up our Italian empire. Let's go ahead and utilize, so we've utilized our civilian factories, now we're going to look into our military factories, and we have 10 free military factories that aren't doing anything. So one thing I want to point out, we aren't going to be building any tanks at all, so I'm just going to go ahead and destroy this light tank, and now we technically have 11 free military factories. We're going to be using a lot of motorized equipment, because the idea is rather than our soldiers walking everywhere at 2 miles per hour, I would love to have a bunch of motorized equipment where basically if I had trucks, they would go 12 miles per hour, or better yet, kilometers per hour, I'm sorry. So the idea is we're going to need oil, rubber, and steel to build these, and I want to go up to -16 oil and -8 rubber, and I'll explain that in just a minute. Okay, so now I have 5 military factories left. Let's put in 3 into our infantry equipment and 2 into support equipment. And now I have 2 military factories left, so I guess I'm going to do 1 and 1. And just like that, we are done with our military factories for now. But we are having a deficit with our oil and our rubber. So that means this is yellow, and all of our production isn't necessarily as efficient as it could be. So let's go ahead and get the oil and get the rubber we need. Much like how I said before, the backbone of your economy is civilian factories. So therefore, if I want oil, I have to give somebody a civilian factory, or at least to use. So it speeds up their economy, slows down mine. But in a way, I get what I want because I get the ability to start producing those trucks. Okay, so looking at oil, looking at rubber, we are in the oil tab. I am going to go ahead and trade with Iran. I want 16 of their oil. Basically, I could trade with a lot of other countries, but basically I'm improving the economy of the country I'm trading with. And Iran doesn't matter, it's all the way over here. I definitely don't want to trade with the Soviet Union, definitely don't want to trade with the United States. Venezuela probably would have been fine. I think the Kingdom of Romania would be annihilated sometime soon, so I don't really want to make it harder on either me or the German Reich if I trade with them. Taking a quick glance, I also need rubber, and in one day, this -16 is going to go away, and this -18. So let's grab our rubber from Brazil. 1 factory. If we give it on over, we're going to get 8 rubber. So ultimately, for all of these, all this oil, all this rubber, we basically gave away 3 factories, which is, that's a lot. So what we need to do is we need to start trading and basically get our economy back on track. So by constructing civilian factories, we are going to get there. Okay, I'm not going to worry about these free dockyards just yet, primarily because I'm out of oil and I really need everything I can get my hands on right now. We don't have a national focus, so let's go ahead and set up one. I could start on any of these branches, any of these 5, but because I have a particular idea, I want to go ahead and start with Ethiopian war logistics. And basically what this means is Eritrea and Somalia down inside Africa. We're going to be adding infrastructure and naval bases. Now, these aren't dockyards, they're naval bases. So basically, we have the ability to move our fleet down there and basically do a lot of not only resupplying, but expanding the area which our navy can go. Now, the reason why I'm going down here is if we improve Africa up, we eventually could get a new extra research slot, and that's absolutely what I'm going to try to get as quickly as possible. Okay, we technically haven't even started the game yet, and it's been about 16 minutes. I am going to go ahead and produce a few units of Alpine divisions, and right now we basically have 4 Alpine divisions. I made them white because of snow, and technically there is one here down in Ethiopia. Basically, we started this way. I'm not going to remove this guy from Ethiopia all the way up until the war is done. So the idea is we have 5 Alpine troops, and I would like to have 14. So let's create 9 divisions. And I'm only going to, instead of an infinite amount of 9 divisions, we're only going to produce 1. This is going to take a very long time to produce, and they have no location, which is good, and low equipment priority. So basically, all of our equipment will go to our war efforts in the south, and everything that's left over will go into these divisions. Other than that, airplanes and reserves, missing equipment in production. If I wait 1 hour, this should go away. Should go away. Yes, because we're trading with Brazil. And let's go ahead, speed the game on up to speed 4. And the only other thing that I want to mention is we have some tanks around here somewhere. So these 3 tank divisions are actually led by Giovanni Messi, who is a very powerful leader, but he is just a general. He is not a field marshal, unlike this weaker field marshal that's level 2. The idea is I want Rodolfo Graziani, or if I'm pronouncing that right at all, to get some skill up. So that's why it's not necessarily the most effective leader inside the Ethiopian war, but obviously we are going to be sending down a very powerful leader with some light tanks. Let's go ahead and finally wait for these units to just remaneuver themselves. I am going to go to speed 5 just for now because I want this Ethiopian war. I know it's going to be over fairly soon. But all we're doing is we're waiting for our tanks to make their way down. They're going through the canal as we speak. And there's really nothing that we can do, at least for now, other than deal with this war. Another thing that I want to point out is my number 1 priority is to build up our civilian factories as much as possible. Now, we obviously do want to improve our Air Force. I mean, we have inter-war fighters that lack 77% range. Like, this is the range on these fighters. Absolute garbage. So what I want to do is I want to build better fighters, or better yet, heavy fighters, to do a lot of patrolling, especially in the African regions. Okay, let's go back to our default map mode. Our tanks are almost here. I'm going to shift-click them all the way over here, and it looks like I can't. So once they arrive, I'm going to bring them all up to North Somalia, and the idea is once they're making their way over, they could just try to just go straight for this city, which I believe is Harar, and we also need to take Addis Ababa. So if I can take both of these cities, this war is going to be over very, very soon, so that's the idea. And what's neat is as they move, they gain morale. Morale is basically, it's not morale, it's actually organization. I'm used to playing Europa Universalis 4. But anyway, organization is like morale, it's hit points. Okay, because we have light tanks and the Africans do not, we are literally going to annihilate anything that stands in our way. So obviously we're going to be winning this fight very easily. Until we get into the mountains, everything is going to go fairly well. Let's go. Alright, we're moving on in very quickly, very efficiently. We are going to try to square off and then go left. Can I go straight into the capital? Yes, I can. I don't know. This is mountainous provinces, so we have a massive, massive penalty to attack. I think it's a 60% reduction. It says 40%. I don't know if that means 60% reduction. Surprisingly enough, we're winning this war. Ethiopian war logistics has been unlocked. Everybody is moving on down. So now that we've completed Ethiopian war logistics, we now have more infrastructure in Eritrea, which isn't really all that great, and Somalia. So not only do we have better infrastructure, but we also have naval bases. The naval bases we have that we already have are basically improved. So what does that mean? We can now fit more units in there without having it being an issue. Okay, so now that we have Ethiopian war logistics, we absolutely want to go into industrial effort, because remember how I said we were building up those civilian factories? Imagine getting 4 civilian factories in only 70 days. Each civilian factory will probably take around 3 or 4 months at full capacity, and we don't even have full capacity in one unit yet. So we're talking 6 months per industrial factory or civilian factory. So it makes a ton of sense to go ahead and just plow through that. Also, everybody is moving into the capital here, and we have the remilitarization of the Rhineland. Germany has stationed troops in the Rhineland territory, close to the French border, in clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles. The local population cheered the German soldiers on, while the diplomatic reactions from France and Britain have so far been muted. It is no more than the Germans walking into their own backyard, a political commentator in Britain observed. So basically, what does that mean? After World War II, there was the Treaty of Versailles, and basically the Treaty of Versailles stripped Germany of a lot of their territorial provinces like Austria, Czechoslovakia, and the idea is they stripped Germany back so much that the idea was to never have another war ever again. So, Germany is obviously very upset about that. They're not only are they paying war retributions, I believe that's the name, of, they are paying back a lot of the money for World War I that they feel that they are not necessarily benefiting to all of the economical standpoints that they should be. So, another part of the Treaty of Versailles, they had this very small territory here called the Rhineland, and basically France wanted to go ahead and ensure that this military zone was never, ever, ever going to be militarized again. So, obviously, Germany just finished up one of their national focuses, and now Germany can station troops inside this territory. It's a clear violation to the Treaty of Versailles, therefore improving basically increasing world tension. So we do need to be on the lookout for that. However, that's good for us because Germany is going to be our ally. Let's go ahead, and we've finally taken Ethiopia. Can we take all of the states in one go? Yes, we can. And we are going to just finally end this war. Going back down to speed 4, because speed 5 is way too long, I am immediately going to take all of these tanks and just put them up inside Venice. I have all 18 of these units. These 1 Mountaineers are going to go into this Mountaineer unit. Everybody is going to be on to the French border. All 17 of these units actually have a variety of colonial divisions inside, so we don't want that. You are going to move down here. You are going to move down here. I don't like this teal color. So I hate to do this while on screen, but the idea is I want to go ahead and ensure that we are very well protected inside our new provinces. Okay, so these 13 units are now going to be combined with our main army for a maximum of 24 divisions. So now this is our entire army, or at least our mobile force, and everybody, of course, is going to make their way up to Rome and Tuscany, and ultimately we still have our 5 Mountaineers. I'm reorganizing this because I like the Mountaineers to be on the very left side. So ultimately we have Mountaineers, we have our main forces, and then we have our tank divisions, and down to the south we have our African divisions and our cavalry. These are eventually going to be military police, but because we don't really need them right now, they don't have an actual purpose. Okay, so now that we've taken bits and pieces of Ethiopia, we have actually conquered one military factory. So the idea is, let's put this to good use. I guess we're going to build another infantry equipment and throw on a military factory there. I am unfortunately going to go ahead and end this episode here, so thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you all have an awesome day, and I will see you in our next adventure.